The mining colony of Vereen 9 was a cruel place. The air tasted of dust and metal, and every wall shook with the sound of heavy drills. The Syndicate controlled everything: the food, the credits, the guards, even the lives of those who worked there. No one dared to speak against them. No one even looked them in the eye. Among the thousands of tired workers, there was one who stood out, a small alien girl named Lura. She was tiny, her frame almost delicate, her skin a pale shade of silver that shimmered faintly under the harsh lights. Her eyes were wide and calm, the color of frozen glass. She never argued, never cried, never ran. She just worked, quietly, carrying heavy containers twice her size with trembling arms. Everyone wondered how she was still alive. Said the Syndicate kept her as a symbol, to remind others what happened when weakness survived under power. Others whispered darker things. They said she was cursed, that those who tried to hurt her disappeared the next day, leaving nothing but ashes where they once slept. No one dared to test those stories. Every morning, when the work alarm screamed, Lura walked through the dusty yard with her head lowered. The other miners moved aside as if she carried a deadly disease. Even the guards didn't look at her for too long. She was untouchable, not because she was powerful, but because fear protected her. Then one day a transport ship landed in the outpost yard, blowing dust into the air. From it stepped a new worker, a human. His name was Ethan Cole. Humans were rare on Vereen 9. Most of them stayed close to the inner systems, working as pilots or engineers. But Ethan was different. His eyes looked tired yet curious, and his hands were rough from years of manual labor. He didn't know the rules of this place, and no one cared to teach him. On his first day, he saw things that made his stomach twist. Guards shouting, miners beaten for slowing down, food rationed like punishment. But what caught his attention most was the small alien girl lifting a crate that was clearly too heavy for her. She stumbled, and the container slipped from her hands, spilling mineral dust across the ground. The yard fell silent. A Syndicate enforcer, a tall, red-skinned alien named Rock Vern, walked toward her. His boots crushed the dust. Everyone backed away. Lura froze, her hands shaking. You dropped Syndicate property, Rock hissed. You know the price. She didn't answer. She just looked down. The crack of the whip echoed through the air. Ethan's heart stopped. He had seen cruelty before, but never like this. He stepped forward without thinking. Hey, he shouted. That's enough. Every head turned. The guards stared in disbelief. No one spoke to the Syndicate that way. Rock slowly turned toward the human, his yellow eyes narrowing. What did you say, outsider? Ethan's voice was steady. She made a mistake. Don't beat her for it. I'll fix it. The air thickened. The miners backed away farther, not wanting to be near what was about to happen. Rock sneered. You must be new here. She doesn't need protection. She belongs to the Syndicate. Ethan frowned. Belongs? She's a person, not property. The alien guard laughed, a deep metallic sound. Human, you don't know who you're speaking for. That little creature is cursed. Everyone who touches her dies. Ethan glanced at Lura. She was trembling, her eyes pleading silently. Don't. But he didn't move back. He bent down and helped her lift the crate. His hand brushed hers for a moment. Gasps spread through the crowd. Some miners stepped behind walls, afraid even to watch. Lura whispered, her voice barely audible. You shouldn't have done that. Ethan smiled faintly. Someone had to. Rock raised his whip again, but Ethan caught his arm mid-swing. The crowd froze. For the first time in years, someone had stopped a Syndicate enforcer. The guard's voice dripped with anger. You've just signed your death. Ethan didn't care. He pushed the arm away, standing his ground. Then make it quick. Lura's eyes widened. No one had ever defended her. No one had ever risked their life for her. The moment felt unreal, like the entire colony had stopped breathing. Finally, Rock dropped his whip. Fine, he snarled. Let's see how long your courage lasts. He walked away, signaling the others to follow. The miners whispered to each other, some in fear, some in quiet awe. Lura stood still, her hands shaking. Ethan bent down again, helping her pick up the spilled minerals. Why did you do that? She asked softly. He shrugged. Because it was wrong. She looked at him, a simple human with no power, no weapon, no status, and for the first time in her life, she felt something strange in her chest. Hope. But hope was dangerous on Vereen 9. As the sun set behind the metal towers, the news spread like wildfire. The human touched her. The workers whispered in the halls. The guards reported to their leaders. And even the Syndicate chief heard of it before nightfall. That evening, Ethan sat alone in his bunk, unaware that dozens of eyes watched him through hidden cameras. Outside his door, Laura stood quietly, the silver light from her eyes flickering like a dying star. She whispered to herself, "He doesn't know what he's started." And somewhere deep beneath the colony, machinery hummed, a hidden network awakening after centuries of silence. Because one human had done the unthinkable. He had touched the fragile one no one touched. The next morning, the colony of Verine 9 buzzed with whispers. Every worker, every guard, every passing drone repeated the same shocking line. The human touched her. In the cafeteria, workers kept their voices low. "He helped her lift the crate," one said, "with his bare hands." Another replied, "He's already dead. They'll make an example out of him." No one laughed. On this planet, even a rumor could kill. But Ethan didn't seem to care. He sat alone at a metal table, chewing a piece of cold bread, unaware of the stares burning into his back. Across the room, Laura stood quietly by the wall, her silver eyes glancing at him only once before lowering again. She wanted to thank him, but fear sealed her lips. She knew how the Syndicate punished defiance. And worse, she knew what touching her might awaken. Outside, a storm of red dust rolled across the horizon. The colony's warning sirens wailed softly, but inside the main square, everything was tense and still. The Syndicate guards were gathering. Their leader, Rock Vern, stood at the center with his heavy armor gleaming under the sun. "Bring the human out," he commanded. His voice echoed through the comm system. He broke the law. He broke our silence. Two guards grabbed Ethan from his workstation. He didn't resist, he just frowned in confusion. "Is this about yesterday?" Rock smirked. "You still don't understand where you are, human. On Verine 9, we have rules." "I didn't see any rule that says you can beat someone for dropping a box," Ethan said calmly. Rock leaned closer, his breath hot and metallic. "The rule is simple, stay silent, stay alive. You interfered with what is ours." The crowd gathered quickly, miners, slaves, even Syndicate officers. All eyes were on the human and the fragile girl standing behind the line of guards. Laura's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run to him to explain, but she couldn't move. Rock raised his voice so everyone could hear. "Let this be a reminder. The Syndicate's word is law. No one, not even a human, challenges it." He swung his arm and struck Ethan across the face with a metal rod. The human stumbled but didn't fall. The second blow cut his lip, but he still didn't cry out. He just looked at Laura as if silently telling her, "Don't be afraid." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The guards hesitated. Some had never seen a human take a beating without screaming. Rock, angry at the lack of reaction, swung harder. Blood hit the sand. Still, Ethan only whispered through his teeth, "You're monsters." The leader froze for a second, surprised. "What did you say?" Ethan looked up, his voice steady. "You heard me." The yard fell silent. Even the wind stopped. Laura couldn't bear it anymore. She stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Stop, please stop hurting him." Rock turned toward her with a cruel grin. "Ah, so the Syndicate's pet can speak after all." He gestured to his men. "Maybe she needs a reminder of her place." Two guards reached for her, but before they could grab her, the air shimmered around her body, faint silver light dancing across her skin. It was so subtle most missed it, but Ethan saw. For a moment her eyes glowed like cold fire. Rock stepped back. "What was that?" Laura looked terrified, as if she didn't understand it herself. I don't know," she whispered. The moment passed as quickly as it came, but Ethan's mind was racing. What was happening to her? Why were they so afraid? The crowd began to whisper again. "She's glowing. Is it true? The curse? No one survives near her." Rock quickly raised his voice. "Enough, this is Syndicate business. Everyone back to work." But the crowd didn't move. For the first time, they didn't obey immediately. Something about the human's courage and the girl's strange light had cracked the fear that ruled them. Rock turned back to Ethan. "You'll pay for this," he growled. "Tonight you'll learn what happens to rule breakers." He gestured for the guards to drag Ethan away. As they pulled him toward the detention sector, Laura whispered under her breath, "They'll kill you for helping me." Ethan turned his head slightly and gave a tired smile. Then it was worth it, her heart sank. No one had ever spoken to her like that, without fear, without disgust, just kindness. When night fell, the colony lights dimmed to red. In the shadows of the prison cells, Ethan sat chained to the wall. He could hear the storm outside and the low hum of Syndicate ships. Somewhere out there, Laura stood under the cold light of the moon, staring toward the cell block. For the first time in years, she felt something rising inside her, something powerful and ancient. She didn't know what it was yet, but she knew one thing for sure. The human didn't understand the rules of this world, and because of him, the rules were about to break. The storm outside the colony grew worse through the night. Red lightning flashed across the sky, striking the metal towers and filling the air with static. Inside the detention sector, Ethan hung from his chains, blood dripping slowly onto the cold floor. His back burned with every breath, but his eyes still held the same calm fire. He wasn't thinking of escape. He was thinking of Laura. He had only known her for a day, yet something about her lingered in his mind. Her quiet strength, her strange sadness, the way everyone seemed to fear her without reason. What had she done to deserve such fear, and why did her eyes glow like that? The door hissed open. Rockvern entered with 2 guards, his armor shining dark red under the flickering lights. He carried a long electric baton, its tip sparking with energy. "Still awake, human?" Rock asked, his tone cruel. "Good, I wouldn't want you to miss what happens next." Ethan looked up, his voice hoarse. "You really enjoy this, don't you?" Rock grinned. "It's not about enjoyment. It's about control. Fear keeps this colony running, and when one fool breaks the order, others must learn from his pain." He pressed the baton against Ethan's shoulder. The shock sent waves of agony through his body. Ethan clenched his jaw but didn't scream. Rock hit him again, harder. Sparks danced, blood steamed. Still, the human refused to cry out. One of the guards muttered, "He's not like the others." Rock snarled, "He's just flesh. They all break eventually." But Ethan didn't break. He just stared straight ahead as if looking past the pain into some distant memory. A promise he once made. A world he left behind. Then came a soft sound from outside the cell. A whisper. "Stop, please." Rock turned sharply. Standing in the doorway was Laura. Her hands trembled and her silver eyes shimmered like light reflecting off water. "Please," she said again. "Don't hurt him anymore." Rock's grin returned. So the cursed girl speaks again. "You should be grateful I haven't sold you yet." She stepped closer. "Let him go. He doesn't understand your laws," Rock laughed. "You think your words mean anything here? You're nothing. A fragile thing the Syndicate keeps alive out of pity." But as he spoke, Laura's voice changed. Not louder, but deeper, carrying something ancient. "You shouldn't have touched him," Rock frowned. "What did you say?" "I said..." Her tone trembled between fear and fury. "You shouldn't have touched him." A strange vibration filled the air. The lights flickered. The guards looked around in confusion. Then the ground began to hum, a low pulse like a heartbeat coming from the walls themselves. Rock raised his baton. Enough tricks. But before he could strike, Laura lifted her hand. Her silver skin began to glow from within, bright lines of light spreading across her arms and face like living veins. The air thickened with energy, bending the metal bars of the cell. The guard stumbled back in terror. Ethan looked at her through half-closed eyes. "Laura, what are you?" She turned toward him, and in that moment her small, fragile form seemed both terrifying and beautiful. "I don't know," she whispered. "But I can't let them hurt you." A burst of light exploded from her chest. The electric baton shattered. Rock was thrown backward into the wall. The guard screamed as energy crackled through the air, shorting out every system in the block. Alarms wailed, doors opened. The colony lights went dark. Ethan fell forward as his chains melted into dust. His ears rang, his vision blurry, but he saw Laura kneeling in front of him, panting, her glow fading slowly. She looked frightened, not of the guards but of herself. Rock groaned, struggling to stand. "You monster." Laura shook her head, tears falling down her cheeks. "No, I'm not a monster. You made me one." She reached for Ethan, helping him to his feet. He could barely stand, but he still managed to smile weakly. "Guess I owe you one now." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "You shouldn't have helped me, and you shouldn't have saved me," he replied. They both laughed softly, a small sound in a world of cruelty, and then the sirens grew louder. Reinforcements were coming, Lura looked at the corridor ahead, glowing faintly again. "We have to run," she said. "They'll come for both of us." Ethan nodded. "Then let's give them a reason to be afraid." The two disappeared into the dark tunnels beneath the colony, as the alarms echoed behind them. The guards whispered in panic about what they had just seen. A girl of light, a human who wouldn't break, and a storm that answered her call. For years, the Syndicate had ruled through fear. But that night, fear changed sides. The tunnels beneath Vereen 9 were cold, dark, and endless. Rusted pipes ran along the walls, dripping water that echoed like distant footsteps. The only light came from the faint glow of Lura's skin, still pulsing softly after what had happened in the detention block. She and Ethan moved through the shadows, breathing hard. Behind them, sirens wailed, and the thump of Syndicate boots shook the ground above. Ethan's legs ached with every step, his body bruised and bloody, but he kept going. "Where are we heading?" he asked. "Down," Lura whispered. "The Syndicate never goes down. They fear the old level." "Why?" She hesitated. "Because something down here remembers them." They reached a narrow chamber where old machines hummed faintly in the darkness. The air was thick with dust and age. Lura pressed her palm to a cracked control panel, and to Ethan's surprise, it flickered to life. The screen recognized her touch, glowing brighter around her hand. "How did you do that?" he asked. She looked at him, uncertain. "I don't know, it just answers me." Ethan watched her as the light reflected off her silver skin. She looked young, almost fragile, but there was something ancient in her eyes, something far older than this colony. "Back in that cell," he said quietly. "You melted steel with your bare hands." "That wasn't luck," Lura turned away. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I tried to hold it back." "Hold what back?" She swallowed hard. "The thing inside me." The air around her trembled as she spoke. The lights of the machine brightened, responding to her heartbeat. Ethan stepped closer, his voice gentle. "You can trust me, Lura. What are you hiding?" She finally met his gaze. "My people once ruled the stars," she said slowly. "Before the Syndicate, before the wars. They called us the Vereen Guardians. We built worlds and protected life wherever we found it. But power corrupts, even in peace." The Guardians turned on each other. "The Syndicate was born from that war, from our own blood." Her voice cracked. "When they destroyed my homeworld, I was just a child. They spared me because they thought I was harmless, a broken remnant of a dying race." Ethan listened in silence, the hum of the machines filling the air between them. "So all this time, you've been living under the people who killed your own?" Lura nodded slowly. "They used me as a warning. Obey or end up like her. They thought the power in me had vanished, but it didn't. It was sleeping." She looked down at her hands, trembling. "When I saw them hurt you, I lost control. The power woke up." Ethan placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You didn't lose control. You saved me." Her eyes softened, reflecting the light like liquid silver. "You don't understand, Ethan. If the Syndicate learns what I really am, they'll come with armies. They won't stop until they burn this planet to ash." He smiled faintly. "Then we'll make sure they never find us." Lura wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe this human's words could protect her from the monsters she'd lived under all her life. But deep down, she knew it wasn't that simple. The machines around them suddenly hummed louder. Symbols appeared on the glowing screen, ancient glyphs that moved like living fire. Lura gasped. "This place, it's responding to me." "What is it?" Ethan asked. "It's a Vereen core, a memory vault. My ancestors used these to record their knowledge. I didn't know any survived." The screen's symbols rearranged into an image, a figure with glowing eyes and silver veins standing among stars. The voice that followed wasn't human. It echoed in their minds. "To the last of our bloodline, if you awaken this vault, know that our enemies still live. The Syndicate will never rest, but within you lies the spark to end their rule." Lura's knees weakened. She clutched her head as the energy flooded her mind. Flashes of war, cities of light, ancient guardians wielding power beyond imagination. Ethan caught her before she fell, holding her steady. "What's happening?" he shouted. "They're showing me," she whispered, eyes glowing again. "They're showing me who I am." Outside the chamber, faint metal footsteps echoed, Syndicate scouts searching the tunnels. The machines dimmed, returning to silence, but the energy around Lura didn't fade. It burned brighter now, controlled, alive. Ethan helped her stand. "We have to move." She nodded, her voice steady but filled with new purpose. Yes, but this time, we don't run, we fight. For the first time since the Syndicate took her, Lura didn't feel small. The power she once feared now felt like part of her. Ancient, heavy, but ready to awaken fully. And Ethan, the human who had risked everything for her, walked beside her without hesitation. As they disappeared into the darkness, the machines whispered one final word across the empty room, a word neither of them heard. Guardian. The tunnels trembled with the sound of marching boots. The Syndicate soldiers had entered the lower levels of Vereen 9, searching, scanning, ready to kill anything that moved. The air was thick with smoke and dust, and the red glow of warning lights turned every shadow into a nightmare. Ethan pressed his back against the cold wall, listening to the noise above. They're everywhere, he whispered. Beside him, Lura stood silent, her faint silver glow dimmed to almost nothing. They're tracking my energy, she said softly. Every time I use my power, they can feel it. Ethan looked at her tired face. Then we'll move quietly, no power. Just us. For a moment, the thought seemed impossible, but the human's calm voice carried strength, a quiet defiance that made her believe again. They slipped through a broken maintenance shaft, crawling through metal and dust. Sparks flickered overhead as Syndicate drones swept the tunnels behind them. The machine's red light scanned every corner, searching for signs of life. At the end of the shaft, they reached a large chamber filled with old cargo containers and half-buried machinery. A single emergency door stood at the far end, their only way out. But beyond it, the storm outside was roaring louder than ever. Lura turned to him. If we open that door, the firestorm will melt us. Ethan smiled grimly. Then we time it right. Before she could argue, the sound of metal clanking echoed from the tunnel behind. Syndicate soldiers were close, maybe 10 of them. She could hear their mechanical breathing and the clicking of their weapons. We're trapped, she whispered. Ethan gripped a broken metal rod he'd found on the ground. Then we fight. She shook her head, fear flashing in her silver eyes. You'll die. He gave her a small grin. Then I'll die trying to keep you alive. The first soldier entered the chamber, his visor glowing red. Ethan swung the rod with all his strength, striking the helmet. Sparks burst, the soldier fell, and chaos exploded. Laser bolts filled the air. Ethan ducked behind a crate, but one beam grazed his arm, burning through the fabric. He hissed in pain. Lura watched him bleed, her heart tightening. She had promised herself she wouldn't use her power again, not after what happened before. But watching him fight alone shattered that promise. Her hands began to glow. The energy inside her pulsed like a heartbeat. The air vibrated. Dust floated upward in slow motion. The soldiers hesitated, realizing too late what she was. Lura stepped into the open, her voice echoing through the chamber. You should have stayed away. A wave of light burst from her palms. It wasn't fire. It was pure energy, rippling like liquid glass. It slammed into the soldiers, throwing them back with a deafening crash. Their weapons melted in their hands. Ethan shielded his eyes as the light filled the room, brighter than the storm outside. When it faded, the soldiers were gone, unconscious, scattered like broken dolls. The air smelled of ozone and burning metal, but Lura fell to her knees, weak and shaking. The glow around her flickered. Ethan rushed to her side, catching her before she hit the ground. Hey, stay with me. I used too much, she whispered. I can't stop it once it starts. He looked toward the exit door. Flames flickered through the cracks, the storm outside still raging. We have to get out before more of them come. Lura took a deep breath, her voice faint but steady. I can get us out, but it will hurt. What do you mean? She touched the control panel. Her glowing fingers melted through the metal, connecting directly to the ship systems hidden beneath. The engines in the old cargo room groaned to life, forgotten machines waking after decades of silence. The entire chamber began to shake. Fire burst from vents, walls cracked, and the floor split open, revealing a transport pod buried below. Ethan stared in awe. You can fly this? She smiled weakly. It was built by my people. It will answer only to me. The door to the pod slid open. Ethan helped her inside, closing it just as the Syndicate's reinforcements burst into the room. Bolts of plasma struck the hull, lighting the air with burning trails. Lura placed her hand on the controls. Hold on, the ship roared. The ceiling shattered, flames pouring in, but the pod shot upward through the smoke like a comet. The shockwave tore through the tunnels below, setting everything ablaze. As they broke through the clouds, Ethan looked down at the colony, a sea of fire and chaos. "You destroyed it," he whispered. Lura shook her head slowly. "No, I set it free." The storm faded behind them. Ahead, the stars stretched across the void, endless and silent. But Lura's body slumped against the seat, her light fading fast. Ethan caught her hand. "Stay with me, please." Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "You saved me once, now I saved you." Then her eyes closed and the ship drifted into the dark. The stars outside the window drifted slowly, distant and cold. The little transport pod floated through the emptiness like a wounded bird. Inside, the air smelled of burnt metal and smoke. Ethan sat on the floor beside Lura, who lay motionless against the wall. Her silver skin was pale, her glow faint, almost gone. He had wrapped his jacket around her even though he knew she didn't need warmth. Still, it made him feel like he was doing something. "Come on, Lura," he whispered.
"Don't fade now." Her chest rose slightly.
A weak breath escaped her lips. "We're safe?" Ethan nodded. "For now. You got us out." Her eyes fluttered open. Then it worked. She tried to smile, but her face looked fragile, as if even a smile could break her. He pressed a hand against her shoulder. "You saved both of us back there. But what did it cost you?" She looked away. "Everything." For a long time, neither spoke. Only the sound of the engines filled the silence. Outside, the wreckage of Virine 9 glimmered faintly, a burned scar on the dark side of the moon. The Syndicate colony was gone, buried under fire and ash. But Ethan knew they wouldn't stop. They would come again. They always did. He turned back to her. "That power you used, can it kill you?" Lura nodded faintly. "Each time I draw from it, it takes part of me. The Guardians were never meant to live long after awakening. That's why I was hidden." Ethan clenched his fists. "There has to be a way to stop it, to control it." She smiled softly. "You still think everything can be fixed, human?" He gave a short laugh. "I fix cargo engines for a living. When things break, I put them back together. Maybe I can do the same for you." Her expression softened. "Maybe that's what makes your kind special. You always believe you can repair what's already lost." The lights flickered. The pod trembled slightly. Ethan frowned and stood. "We're losing power. The main thrusters burnt out." He went to the control panel, pressing a few keys, but half the system was fried. They were running on emergency energy, hours left at most. Lura sat up weakly, her voice faint. "There's a fuel reserve under the hull, but it needs manual restart." Ethan sighed. "Of course it does." He found the hatch, opened it, and climbed into the maintenance shaft. Sparks fell from the wires. The engine room smelled of heat and ozone. He started reconnecting circuits, fingers shaking from exhaustion. Through the crack in the floor, Lura watched him work. Despite the bruises, despite everything, he still moved with purpose. A strange warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she had almost forgotten. But then a new sound echoed through the ship, a deep, rhythmic pulse. Her eyes widened. It wasn't the engine. It was a tracker signal. The Syndicate had locked onto them. "Ethan," she shouted. "They found us." He crawled out from the hatch. "Already?" She nodded. "They must have followed the energy burst from my escape." Ethan ran to the controls, checking the radar. Several red dots were closing in fast. Syndicate interceptors. He looked at her. "We can't outrun them with this engine." Lura's glow brightened slightly as she stood. "Then I'll stop them," he grabbed her arm. "No, you'll burn yourself out." She looked at him, eyes glowing like liquid fire. "If I don't, they'll kill you." "They'll kill everyone they find." Ethan shook his head. "There has to be another way." Her voice was calm, steady. "This is the only way." He felt his throat tighten. "Lura, don't..." She touched his face gently, her fingers cool and soft. "You showed me kindness when no one else did. You reminded me what it means to be alive. Let me return that gift." Before he could stop her, she stepped to the center of the pod. Light began to radiate from her body. Slow at first, then brighter, filling every corner of the ship. The walls vibrated. The metal hummed like a living thing. Ethan covered his eyes, shouting over the roar, "Lura!" She turned her head one last time, smiling faintly. "Don't be afraid, Ethan. You'll see the dawn again." The light burst outward. The Syndicate ships on the radar blinked out, one after another, consumed by a wave of pure energy. Then everything went silent. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was floating in darkness. The stars had returned. The pod was drifting quietly, power gone, but alive. And in the seat beside him, the glow was gone. Only her silver bracelet remained, warm to the touch. He closed his eyes, whispering, "The price of power." Outside, the wreckage of the Syndicate ships shimmered like falling stars across the void. Silence filled the stars. The little transport pod drifted endlessly, surrounded by pieces of Syndicate wreckage glowing faintly in the dark. Inside, Ethan lay half awake, staring at the empty seat beside him. The soft hum of the ship had faded long ago. Only the ticking of cooling metal broke the quiet. He still held Lura's bracelet in his hand, the silver one that glowed faintly whenever she laughed, whenever her heart had burned with light. Now it was cold. He had tried everything, restarting the pod's systems, calling for rescue, even speaking to her as if she might somehow hear him. But no voice answered. No light returned. "She's gone," he whispered to himself. He leaned back, staring out at the endless black of space. In that silence, the weight of everything hit him. Her courage, her sacrifice, the way she smiled when she said he'd see the dawn again. He laughed weakly. "Guess I did, Lura. I just wish you were here to see it too." But something strange was happening outside. The wreckage drifting around the pod began to shimmer. Small, scattered pieces of metal catching invisible light. Ethan frowned, sitting up. The stars seemed to pulse brighter than before, forming a faint trail across the void. "Am I dreaming?" he muttered. Then softly he heard a hum, familiar, gentle, almost like a voice. The bracelet in his hand warmed, glowing again with pale silver light. His eyes widened. "Lura?" The light spread through the cabin, filling the air with floating dust-like particles. They gathered slowly in front of him, shaping themselves into a faint silhouette, small, delicate, glowing softly from within. Ethan froze. You're here." Her voice was faint but clear, carried on light. "Not as before. The power took my body, but not my soul. The Guardians were made of energy, Ethan. When we gave too much, we became what we once protected. Light." He felt his chest tighten. "You don't have to go. Stay here. I'll find a way." She smiled, the same small, peaceful smile that once lit up the tunnels. "You already did. You showed me something the Syndicate could never understand." "What's that?" "Compassion." Her voice echoed softly through the pod. "Because of you, I remembered who I was, not a weapon, not a curse, but a guardian. My light is not meant to destroy anymore. It's meant to heal." Ethan shook his head, tears blurring his vision. "You're still saving people, even now." Her glowing form floated closer, the silver light touching his face like a warm breeze. "And so will you. The power left traces inside you when I saved you. It will guide you where you're needed most. Don't waste it hiding." He swallowed hard. "What if I can't do what you did?" "You already have," she whispered. "You stood up when no one else did." The bracelet pulsed once more. The glow began to fade. "No," Ethan said, voice breaking. "Please, don't leave again." Her fading form looked at him one last time. "I won't. As long as you remember me, I'll never truly be gone." The light drifted away, scattering like silver dust through the cabin, disappearing into the stars beyond. Ethan sat there for a long time, the silence returning, but it no longer felt empty. He looked down at the bracelet, which now shimmered softly around his wrist as if alive again. Outside, the trail of light Lura had left behind stretched far into the distance, a shining path through space. He didn't know where it led, but he knew what she wanted him to do. He stood steadying himself. "All right, Lura," he murmured. "Let's finish what you started." He turned to the control panel. The pod's dead systems flickered for the first time in hours. The engines hummed weakly and a spark of life returning. The bracelet glowed brighter, syncing with the controls. Ethan smiled through his tears. "Guess you're still helping me fly." The pod slowly turned toward the light trail ahead. As it followed the path, the stars began to brighten. Hundreds, then thousands of tiny silver flares igniting across the sky. And somewhere in the deep quiet of the universe, a whisper echoed. A voice both ancient and kind. "Guardian, your light endures." The camera of the story would pull back here, showing the small human ship drifting through the stars, guided by a luminous trail across the void. Behind him, the ruins of the Syndicate fleet faded into darkness. Ahead, the light stretched forever. A fragile girl once feared by all had become a legend. The petite alien no one dared to touch. The last guardian who gave her light to a human, and the human who carried that light into the stars.